Have you ever stopped in the middle of your busy day and wondered why time is structured the way it is? Perhaps you've pondered why some months feel like they drag on forever, while others seem to vanish in the blink of an eye. Or maybe you've questioned why February can't just make up its mind and stick with a set number of days. It's not just you. We've all been there. So buckle up, because it's time to unravel the science and history behind calendars. To understand the science behind calendars, we need to step back into history. Imagine a time before smartphones, before watches, before any form of man-made timekeeping. How would you measure the passing of days, months, or years? This was the conundrum faced by ancient civilizations, and their solution was as elegant as it was simple. Observe the skies. The earliest known calendars were lunar-based, with each new moon marking the start of a new month. This system was used by various cultures across the globe, from the ancient Mesopotamians to the Native Americans. The moon was a reliable timekeeper, visible to the naked eye and consistent in its phases. The moon's cycle from new moon to full moon and back again takes roughly 29.5 days. Multiply that by 12 and you get a year of about 354 days. Not quite a full solar year, which is approximately 365.25 days, but close enough for early civilizations to keep track of seasons and plan their agricultural activities accordingly. But the lunar calendar was not without its flaws. The discrepancy between the lunar and solar year meant that over time, the months would drift out of sync with the seasons. Imagine celebrating New Year's Day in the middle of summer, or Harvest Festival in the dead of winter. To keep their calendars aligned with the solar year, some cultures added an extra month, or intercalary month, every few years. This was the case with the ancient Romans, who used a lunar calendar until the reign of Julius Caesar. But the moon cycle was not the only celestial phenomenon observed by our ancestors. The sun, stars, and planets also played a crucial role in the development of calendars, leading to more accurate timekeeping systems and the establishment of the leap year. The moon cycle was just the beginning, though. But the lunar calendar was not enough. Humans needed something more accurate. And so the transition from lunar to solar calendars began, a fascinating switch that would shape our understanding of time. Before we dive in, let's quickly recap. The lunar calendar, based on the moon's phases, was our earliest attempt at tracking time. But it had a sizable flaw. The lunar year is about 11 days shorter than the solar year, which meant that the seasons started drifting out of sync. Imagine celebrating Christmas in the sweltering heat of July. Not quite the white winter wonderland we're used to, is it? Enter Julius Caesar, the Roman general with a penchant for precision. In 45 BC, he introduced the Julian calendar, the first solar calendar. It was based on the Earth's rotation around the sun, rather than the moon's orbit around the Earth. This was a game changer. The Julian calendar was far more accurate than the lunar calendar, but it wasn't perfect. You see, the Earth doesn't neatly orbit the sun in exactly 365 days. It takes about 365.25 days. To account for this pesky quarter of a day, Caesar introduced the concept of a leap year. Every fourth year, an extra day was added to the shortest month, February, making it a 29-day month instead of the usual 28. This leap year system worked well for a while, but there was a slight miscalculation. The solar year is actually about 11 minutes less than 365.25 days. Over centuries, these extra 11 minutes each year added up, causing the calendar to drift out of sync with the seasons once more. So while the Julian calendar was a significant step forward in our quest for an accurate way to track time, it wasn't quite there yet. Yet even Julius Caesar's calendar needed some tweaking. And that's where our friend Pope Gregory XIII comes in, but we'll save his story for the next chapter. Enter Pope Gregory XIII in the 16th century. By now, the Julian calendar had been in use for over a millennium and a half, and people started to notice that it was slightly off. And when I say slightly, I mean by about 11 minutes per year. That might not seem like much, but over the course of centuries, those minutes really started to add up. So Pope Gregory XIII decided it was time for a calendar reform. He wanted a system that more accurately reflected the length of the solar year. The result was the Gregorian calendar, which we still use today. But how did it address the inaccuracies of the Julian calendar? Well, the Julian calendar had a leap year every 4 years, straightforward enough. However, this system slightly overestimated the length of a solar year. The Gregorian reform changed the rules for leap years. Now a year is a leap year if it is divisible by 4, but not if it's divisible by 100, unless it's divisible by 400. Confused? Don't worry, so were people in the 16th century. And what about the varying lengths of months? Well, that's a whole other can of worms. The months as we know them today were largely established in the Julian calendar, based on lunar cycles and some Roman politics. But the Gregorian reform didn't change the number of days in each month. So, we are still left with the eccentric system where some months have 30 days, others 31. And poor February, well, it gets the short end of the stick most of the time. So, the calendar we use today is a product of centuries of observations and adjustments. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good approximation of our journey around the sun. And let's be honest, who really wants to change all their calendars again? Yet, the Gregorian calendar is not the only calendar in use today. While it may dominate our daily lives, there are other systems of measuring time that are just as fascinating and deeply rooted in culture and science. Let's take a trip across the globe, starting in the Middle East with the Islamic calendar. This lunar-based system is comprised of 12 months and approximately 354 days. It's used primarily for religious purposes, with events such as Ramadan beginning and ending according to its phases. Next, we move to Israel, the homeland of the Hebrew calendar. This lunisolar calendar is used to determine Jewish holidays and ritual observances. It's a complex system that balances lunar months with a solar year through the addition of a leap month in 7 out of every 19 years. Our journey then takes us to India, where the Hindu calendar is used. This is a fascinating blend of solar and lunar elements, with the year divided into 12 lunar months, but with an extra month added approximately every 3 years to keep in sync with the solar year. The Hindu calendar is deeply tied to astrology and plays a significant role in determining auspicious dates for events and festivals. And these are just a few examples. From the Persian calendar, which is arguably the most accurate solar calendar, to the traditional Chinese calendar with its complex cycle of animal years, calendars offer a fascinating glimpse into different cultures. They reflect our human need to understand and organize the passage of time, influenced by our observations of celestial bodies and shaped by our cultural and religious contexts. So, while we may live by the Gregorian calendar's rhythm, it's worth remembering that there are many other ways to mark the passing of days, months, and years. They each offer unique perspectives on time, steeped in rich historical and cultural traditions. Indeed, the way we measure time is as diverse as our cultures. So, there you have it, the science and history behind calendars. The journey of timekeeping has been as diverse as the cultures that created them. We've traced the steps from the earliest lunar calendars, based on the cycles of the moon, to the more accurate solar calendars, based on the Earth's rotation around the sun. We've seen how the months got their varying numbers of days, a legacy from the Roman Empire's desire for political symbolism and mathematical convenience. We've also explored the Gregorian reform, a pivotal moment in calendar history, which brought us the system most widely used today. And yet, the Gregorian calendar is not the only way to track the passage of time. Around the world, different cultures maintain their unique calendars, each rich with their own history and significance. Whether it's the Hebrew, Islamic, or Hindu calendars, they all remind us of the diversity of human experience and our shared attempt to understand and organize our world. But what's truly fascinating is how these complex systems of timekeeping have shaped our daily lives, our cultures, and even our languages. They are testament to the human instinct to seek order, to understand the natural world, and to find our place in the cosmic dance of celestial bodies. Remember, time is what you make of it. So make it count, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.